Thank you for joining us today. My name is Marissa Pecoraro. I use she, her pronouns. I am the in-person program coordinator for Huntington's Disease Youth Organization, also known as HDYO. Welcome back to the HDYou Community Stories. This is a series dedicated to sharing stories and experiences from the HD community for the HD community. Today, we will be discussing testing stories. We know these experiences can be emotional and difficult for some people, so please reach out to HDYO on social media at HDYO feed on Instagram or by email at info@hdyo.org if you need support or have any questions. And remember, every journey is unique. What I shared today is not a guideline for what to do. These are stories about individual experiences. This session will be hosted by our lovely ambassador, Claudia, who will guide our conversation today with a few other people who have chosen to share their stories with us. Thank you for leading this conversation today, Claudia.
Thank you, Marisa. As Marisa was saying, today we're talking about something personal and often emotional. So the experience of genetic testing, what it's like to make that decision, to go through the process, and how it can shape the way we see ourselves and our connection to HD. So I'm Claudia, I'm an Italian HDYO ambassador, and today I'm here with Melissa and Ashley. Thank you for being here and deciding to sharing your experience. So I'll just start by asking you to introduce yourself a little bit. Ashley, I know you're a VIP, but if you want to introduce yourself a little more for the ones looking at this video for the first time.
Thank you so much, Claudia. I am Ashley. I am from Northern Ireland and I have been involved with the HD community for maybe going on 17 years. I've sat on different boards and been an advocate for the disease for most of that time, and it has been truly amazing. I cared for my daddy who had the disease and lost his life 3 years ago.
Thank you. Melissa.
Hi, my name's Melissa. I'm the non-VIP. Just kidding.
We're not VIP, just Ashley's.
Yeah. I'm from the States, from North Carolina. And I have been involved with HD organizations, communities for about 14 or 15 years now. I had joined my first support group shortly after testing. I grew up with my mom symptomatic with HD. She probably started symptoms right before I was born, some of the cognitive and psychiatric things. I was caregiving for her when I was 8 years old. So HD was just normal for me growing up. She passed away when I was 20. She spent the last 10 years of her life or so in and out of nursing homes. Since then, I will talk about my testing status, but I have a lot of family members who are gene positive. I'm a caregiver for my oldest brother currently, and I got married to someone who is at risk. So my mother-in-law has Huntington's. So my running joke is I can't get enough of it in my life. So here I am.
Now I feel like a newbie. I didn't even get to 10 years into the HD community. I'm the newbie here. So, second question. What it's like, what was your experience like growing up with HD in your family? And if you want to attach to that, when did you first start thinking about genetic testing? What made you, considered it? Ashley, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So dad got diagnosed with Huntington's disease in 2008. So I was, I think, 14, 15 years old. We always knew that Granny, which was his mommy, she had something I remember her being in the nursing home, and I remember that she was technically, sick. But it was never really, explained what that was. So then dad's diagnosis came as he was symptomatic. So he went and got tested and was diagnosed with a CAG repeat of 45 and symptomatic. There was little telltale signs that you could see, things like his personality had changed. He was very maybe short-tempered, and you could see movements. But the problem we had was it was probably hard to tell. My dad was also in a plane crash, and had quite substantial injuries from that left his legs quite damaged. He did get back the ability to walk and drive and essentially live a normal life, but he would have been quite like twitchy and fidgety and walked with a limp. So when that side of the Huntington's symptoms kicked in, it was kind of hard to tell. And that was one of Dad's first symptoms. And then it was whenever like his personality started to change, that's then when it was like definitely, oh, right, you know, there's something here, you know. It was definitely hard. You know, as a young teenager, I idolized my dad. I adored him, and I have some amazing memories as a little girl, you know, that ultimate like daddy-daughter relationship. But when the Huntingtons kicked in, that completely changed. So it did. Um, Things got really hard, and our relationship went a completely different way, which it was really hard to lose that side of things and that like part of my life. But you know, when we got the diagnosis, we then I suppose we had an explanation for it. At the time, it was obviously very hard to tell a teenager, you know, oh, your daddy doesn't mean it. You know, it's the disease doing it to him. But now, you know, as an adult and with a better understanding of the disease, I can see that's exactly what it was, you know. The choice to get tested, I lived at risk for most of my life. I did go to get tested when I was 18. I was very adamant that I wanted to test, and there was no swaying me. But I just felt like the support wasn't there, and I didn't like how things were going. So to protect myself, I decided to stop the testing before the blood draw. So I then ended up living from the age of 18 till 32. Am I 32? Yeah, from 18 to 32 at risk. And everyone's different. Some people can live at risk quite happily, it doesn't bother them. Some people just want to test, and that's totally fine. But for me, most of the time, I was completely fine with living at risk of the disease, and it didn't overly bother me too much. So it didn't. I'd say really probably until we lost Dad. That's when it started creeping back in.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Melissa, you want to share?
Like I said, my mom was already symptomatic, and my youngest memory, I was probably like, I think I was like 4 years old, and I remember her having a complete fit that she couldn't find a friend's phone number. And like being that young, the feeling in me was that if we don't find it, like the world's going to open up and swallow us whole. Like it felt like an emergency. And I mean, the shelves were cleared with books, like the entire living room was a mess. And then I remember when my mom found her friend's phone number, she just sat down and called her like nothing happened. And I went back in my room and I grabbed my little Minnie Mouse and I was like, I don't understand what just happened. And so a few years after that, my mom had lost her job and then we were losing our house. And a lot of the other family members were looking at her thinking she was acting a lot like my grandpa, like her father. But he was a drunk and my mom didn't drink or do drugs or anything. So fortunately, from what I understand, the first like neurologist she went to see knew about Huntington's and suggested testing for it. So that's how she got diagnosed. And then we lived with my uncle for a couple years, and I was trying to like stay home from school to take care of her. And I was 8 years old. I started like cooking and cleaning. I was like tying her shoes, cleaning up her coffee spills, and that was just normal. I thought everyone tied their parents' shoe. And it really wasn't until when I got involved in the Huntington's community a couple years after someone asked me to talk about being a young caregiver. And I was like, well, I don't have anything to say. Like I wasn't a young caregiver. And they're like, you were. And I think that's when it kind of hit me where I was like, oh, I was like, but to me, it was just like my normal. It's what you did. So my mom, at one point had kind of a psychiatric break, and so she was institutionalized. And my parents were divorced, so my dad was asked to take custody of us. And from there, she was kind of in and out of a couple nursing homes because she was aggressive. She fell a lot. She was suicidal. So it took a while for her to settle into that norm and settle into a facility. And then she passed away when I was 20, which was in 2008. And so growing up though, like I knew I had Huntington's. Like it was never a question in my mind. Even like every family gathering we have, even my mom's funeral, all anyone could tell me was that I'm just like my mom. Because I would ask people about like what was she like before she was symptomatic, and they'd be like, well, a lot like you, yada yada. And so like why wouldn't I also have HD? And so when I was 24, that's when I had the opportunity to get tested. And I didn't have health insurance, so I was on like a community insurance program through a hospital. And I was just meeting with my primary care doctor, and they're like, you could get tested for this and not pay anything for it. So I said, sure, let's do it. So there wasn't anything that I didn't put much more thought into it, which I'm assuming we'll kind of like delve into a little bit more. But it was just a matter of convenience, and I already knew the answer. I wasn't involved in any organizations then or knew other people affected by Huntington's, so I didn't know about like getting insurances in place or how to build a support system to be there. And let's see, okay, I was just making sure I was on track with my questions. So from there, I tested G negative. And so I think I'll like delve into that a little bit more, but that's in general what it's been like growing up with HD. And then even now I'm a caregiver for my oldest brother who's 17 years older than me. So it's a different experience now being a caregiver as an adult versus being a young caregiver, and then feelings of survivor's guilt along the way.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you for sharing. And you said you went testing because you found about this possibility of do it, but did you know like what the process would involve? Did you talk to others who had gone through it, or did you just find your own way?
I just found my own way. Like I didn't, I'm a little bit older, and so Google wasn't like a thing growing up. And I think when Google was kind of like invented, I remember after high school, like one time I looked it up and I was like, ooh, I'm going to start like something for Huntington's. And I saw there was like a big organization already. And I was like, oh, okay, it's been done. And I didn't look at it again. So when it came to testing, they were like, okay, you're going to meet with a psychiatrist. So I did go through like a genetic counselor. And we met with the psychiatrist, and he asked me a lot of questions about my debt. And I'm like, I mean, I don't think it matters that I'm in debt. Like, I don't think I'm at any risk to do anything based on the test results. But, and I don't remember if they ever really prepared me for the possibility of a negative result. Or like if they did, if I just blocked that out of my mind, because to me, it wasn't a possibility. And so I think that was something that I didn't prepare for, but I don't know if I could have prepared for that. But knowing what I know now, I think it would have been nice to be connected to the community before I went through testing. Although I probably would have still made the same decisions, but it would have been different to like know that I had a community to rely on.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ashley, same question, but also since you said that you started the process and also then decided to stop, when was that specific moment when you felt ready again to take that step?
Yeah, so I guess here in the UK, it's, you get referred to, the genetics department or the neurology department, and they kind of work very closely together. The long and short of it, with like no bumps in the road or nothing like that there, you essentially have 3 appointments. One where you meet your genetic counselor and you talk through things, and like they'll make sure that like you have a good understanding of what the process is, what the disease is, what to expect. And let's be fair, they're looking for red flags to see if you can cope with this diagnosis, whether it be positive or negative. Your second appointment, they just check in, see are you still happy to continue? And then if you are, they do like the blood draw. And then your third appointment, it's literally a letter pushed across the table to you. And the neurologist, explains like what the results is in that letter. So all in all, mine took 6 months from start to finish. So I went for my first appointment in March. My referral was made in February. I went for my first appointment in March, my next appointment in May, and then my results were in July. And being like so involved with the community, it's sort of, it's like I find that interesting what like you just said about how like you weren't involved with the community at that time and stuff, and I'm like, I never thought about it like that, like whereas like I had the whole HD community, but I will admit I did choose to keep testing to myself just so that I could like digest and process and go through this at like my pace. And I told like very close family and friends who were in like like my inner daily circle, like that kind of thing, um just so that like I had that support. So I did, but I didn't, for me who shares everything online and shares my whole HD life, I actually chose not to share it online. And I think this is actually maybe like the first time I've spoke about it since my results, even for like that online platform. But it was more just I was very cautious about protecting myself and getting through it. As much as I knew what the process was, I didn't know like what to expect in the way of like how I would react to it. When Dad passed away 3 years ago, I got quite scared, I think, because of what I'd watched him go through. And without, going into too much detail, because I know it might be triggering for other people watching, we were with Dad for 10 days, let's say. And, after that, that stuck with me for a good bit. And I can remember messaging Jenna and, saying like, hey, like this is what's in my head. I'm feeling a bit scared. I'm thinking about testing. Like, I don't know if I can keep living at risk. As much as I was prepared for like the caring role, and over the years I'd learnt and I'd grown and I'd been supported, and I was fine that way. Nobody ever, and well, I mean, we don't want to, maybe, nobody really actually talks about what it's like in the end. And that's one thing that I wasn't prepared for. And then I think it put the absolute fear of God in me for my future. And, would I end up with the same genetic results as my dad? I sat with it and I just let that like simmer, and I just let myself have them feelings and have them thoughts. And they did eventually die down again. So I knew then, I was like, okay, I was like, no, I'm good. I'm good. I think I'll leave it for another while, whereas if I had a still been having those thoughts and feelings, I would have pushed for it more and pushed for that test more. But it was just this year, I was like, I'm 32. I moved in with my partner. I wanted to know if, kids were an option naturally or not. I wanted to know about, owning my own home for the first time. I just rented and, stuff like that there, lived with family. So it was like that sort of like future planning, legal, like big girl grown up stuff. I don't know how else to say it other than I just was like, no, you know what? I'm done. I need to know. That's it. And I contacted my local GP and I was like, what's the wait time up at Belfast City Hospital for the genetics department? And I can't remember what they said. I think they actually rang me back and they were like, oh, it's like a year for your first appointment. And I was like, absolutely not. I am not sitting a year when I've made the decision. I'm not waiting a year, just for like the first appointment. How long was it going to be to results then? So I messaged my old boss, who is a very good friend and runs the Northern Ireland charity. And I was like, hey, FYI, I'm going to go private. Like, I'm just going to pay private for this. I'm just going to get the results. But I just wanted to let you know. And she messaged me back out of absolute love. And she was like, please don't. She was like, leave it with me. She was like, let me see what I can do. Like, we have connections with the genetics department. We work with them really regularly. Like, we've got a great relationship with them now. Like, leave it with me and, let me get back to you. Like, are you happy for me to do that? And I was like, yeah, do what you need. Like, go on. Like, I was just so easygoing about it nearly. I was like, whatever it is, whether I go private or I go through like the NHS, I was like, I didn't care, if that makes sense. I just wanted the test. So then she messaged me back and she was like, no, like they can get this done like start to finish 6 months, and you'll get your first appointment in like 6 weeks. And I was like, oh, I was like, that's much quicker. I was like, that's fine. I can do 6 months. I can wait 6 months. But yeah, and that was it. It was the decision was made. The referral was in. I was standing in work on my break and I listened to her, voice note and I texted her right back and went, yeah, go ahead. And that was it. And it was so weird because it was such a big monumental moment. And I literally done it like on break in work. So like you'd think I was like, ordering like a chippy tea, and I was like ordering my Huntington's test. But it was a bit of an odd one, but um I just I don't know how else to explain it other than it just felt right. Like my mom was on board. I spoke with her. My partner was on board. He was like, I'm here for you, whatever you need. Like, if this is what you want to do it. Like, we'll get through this together. Everything just felt right. And this sounds really stupid, but everything in like my little world, it felt quiet. And I always used to laugh when people were like, oh, you'll know when the right time is. And I'm like, there's never a right time. I mean, there's always something going on. Like the car needs fixing, or, when dad was here, dad needed something, or, there's maybe another family member going through like a different health thing. Um, but I hate that I'm admitting it. The time just felt right. I'm so cliche. So cliche.
I'm curious if I could follow up, Claudia, with Ashley, for like involving like your mom and your partner. I guess because you were already involved in all these organizations, like I always tell people to like make sure your support people have support. So were there any conversations or things that took place like with your mom or your partner to be like, hey, if the result is this is what I need, this is what you need to do for you versus, either way that it went.
Oh, I think, see, I feel like I'm a wee bit of like an exception to the rule. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I just think I'm special and I'm not actually. But I think because I've been to so many different events, met so many different amazing, wonderful people, organizations, like everything, I felt like when I say it was the right time, I was probably the most educated I could be, not only on the disease, but I'd seen so many phenomenal people speak out about their testing journey. I'd seen so many people go through it, whether it be watching a similar video to this on YouTube or just like talking to somebody at Congress or talking to somebody at HDN. So I felt like I was like the best equipped that I could be for myself and my family. So like I spoke with my mom, and my mom, bless her soul, I mean, it put the absolute fear of God in her. Of course it did. I am still her little girl, and she was so scared. But I was like, Mom, I said to her, I was like, if you need anybody, and I had said, I was like, listen, I can put you in contact with Jenna. Like, Jenna has a great understanding of the disease, and she's also a mother. So like she will relate with you, and the two of you can get on like a chat, a video call, whatever it is. I don't care if you drink a glass of wine and hash it out. I was like, there is people there for you, Mom, if you need them. And then I reached out to my aunt, who is my mum's sister, and I was just like, hey, I'm not putting this on you, but like, could you be there for mum? Like, if mum wants to talk about it, you'll listen. If mum wants to cry about it, if whatever mum needs, like, can you be there for her? And my aunt was a trooper and was like, 100%. If she rings, I'll lift the phone. If she texts, I'll answer. And then I did the same for my partner, James. I said to him, I was like, listen, talk to your mom, talk to your sister. I'm fine with you sharing with them details about this, because of like the magnitude of it. Don't go and tell them that I shouted at you because you put your socks outside the laundry hamper and not in the laundry hamper. But you're allowed to talk to them about like the testing side of things. Like I'm more than comfortable with that. Don't think I would be annoyed. So like I know he had the support of his family, which like James and I aren't married, but they're my family as well, and they were such a huge support to the two of us. And then I said to him, I was like, if at any point it gets like super, super heavy, will you promise me that you will say to me and I can get you like outside help as well, you know? And I was like, I won't be involved with it. Like, I'll just connect you and then like you go with it. Like, this is not going to be like couples counseling for, you know, HD testing. Like, you can go and you can say what you want. Because I wanted, I wanted like the people close to me to know that like they could go and speak freely and not be afraid of saying something that would upset me. Like if James wanted to turn around and be like, she's so selfish for doing this, I wasn't ready for it, he can say that. That's okay, because that's how he feels, you know? Um, he never did. He was a trooper. He I don't know. He was just a trooper through the whole thing, so he was. Um, but yeah, I wanted them to make sure that they knew that there was that space for them to protect themselves and talk it out. And, you know, I wasn't stuck in the middle of it because of my connection with the community and the support organizations that I'd be linking them in with.
Great question, first of all, and thank you for sharing. So Ashley shared about, having her partner, her mother, basically the whole family as a support system, and that's actually super, super great. So I wanted to ask you, Melissa, what kind of support did you have while making this decision, both, professional, personal, or whatever?
Mhm. Yeah, I was going to say thank you for sharing that, Ashley, too. And I want to highlight that you were giving permission, like you had conversations about giving permission for people to have their own experiences, which I think is really important in this realm of HD, is like giving consent and giving permission and things like that. So I want to emphasize that part. For me, I think that I think about this a lot, like with my testing journey, and then if my wife decides to test because she is at risk and what that would look like now. So that'll probably make me more emotional than anything. But when I tested, like I said, I didn't have connections in the HD community, and I planned to have like my brother and my sister there with me. And that was pretty much it. And I had like my best friends at home waiting to find out what would happen. But I did not get my results the way I wanted to. We had planned an appointment, and it was right before my birthday. So my birthday's in December. It's very close to Christmas. And my appointment was supposed to be like a week before my birthday. And I had planned for my brother to come into town and my sister, and they were going to go with me. And I work as a sign language interpreter. So there was a day that I was actually working in the hospital that I tested at. And I saw a missed call from the genetics department. And the voicemail said, "Hey, Melissa, it's Dr. So-and-so. I just wanted to give you an early birthday Christmas gift. Like, if you just want to give me a call back, that would be great." And we all know where this is going. So I returned the phone call, and I was about to say, "I'm literally 500 feet from your door." So it's like I could have popped in. And she's like, "Well, I just wanted to give you an early gift and save you guys the trip and let you know you tested negative." Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was like, thanks, and got off the phone, and I was in this huge lobby area of a hospital, and I just fell to the ground and just started crying. And I wasn't really processing about like how upset I was with getting the news that way. Like I was just like, and all the feelings that I was having. Fortunately, I was done with work for the day. So I got my car. I called my best friends immediately to tell them. And then as soon as I got home, I called my sister and my brother. And when I called my brother, he was like, "Oh, great, now it's my turn to test." And for some reason, like, and this is my brother's closer in age to me, I never imagined he was at risk. I was just like, I grew up knowing I had it, which meant he didn't have it. And that was just my mentality. And so after I got off the phone with him, I started to realize like I felt like absolute garbage. And everyone else in my life was like, "This is great news. You're in the clear. You're out of the woods." And I'm like, why does it feel like I fell down the well then? Like, and I think things like that still kind of ebb and flow. And over the years, I found support through the HD community, and really that, like that, and talking to my brother was like what pushed me to go to my first support group. And so I started to meet other people affected by Huntington's, and then my local group sponsored me to go to like our national convention here in the States, which changed my life. The National Youth Alliance changed my life. I met my sister from another mister, and when we were advocating in DC, we were outside shoveling snow, crying about how we both felt like shit for testing negative. And then we started like hosting sessions to talk about, this survivor's guilt, which I say is like a nice little label on a box. And then you open up the box and there's so much stuff in there. Because the feelings just kind of ebb and flow. So yeah. And I think a lot now about, when my wife does decide to test, because we're both very involved in the community, um, and I feel like I would selfishly need more support than her. She's just kind of like, yeah, whatever, if you know her, you know her. And so I think about that now with the HD community and how so many of our closest friends are both of our friends, like through the community, and just kind of thinking about how we would plan that, or like how many people she would want to know that the process is happening, or things like that. So we'll see.
Thank you for sharing. And that's, what happened to you. It's a little bit unbelievable. I think it's a great misconception about testing negative. Like, even I'm at risk. I haven't tested yet, but when I talk to people about the possibility of getting tested, or just the fact that this is something in my life, they usually react up, well, but if you test negative, then you're good, you're clear. And I'm like, no, like my whole identity is shaped on HD. I still have a family, I still have a mother, I still have a sister, I still have parents. It's not like HD is going to vanish or disappear. And it's really something that it's good that you're advocating for, and we need to kind of raise awareness on this, on the fact that testing is not just good or bad result. Testing is a process, and the result, it's just the end, but it's not something that defines it. So again, I'm sorry that you had that experience. It's really awful. And connecting with this, I want to ask you, what were you expecting? We know that it went that way, but can you each talk a little bit about what you were expecting, and also like, did anything from the process, like before, during, or after, maybe surprise you? Like something you didn't expect, or didn't expect to go that way?
I sort of had a rough idea of how it was supposed to go because of like going semi through it when I was 18. So I knew it was 3 appointments. I knew they were going to be like 2 months apart. Like I knew all that kind of stuff. Um, I hadn't really like thought about like what I expected from it and stuff. So I hadn't. I can remember going into like the first meeting with my genetics counselor, and she ended up like she was like so in awe of like when I started saying about like all like the work with the Huntington's community I did, and started talking about like research and drug trials and pharma companies, and And then James was like, sure, you went to one of the like, one of the like labs. And I was like, oh yeah, like I went over to Amsterdam to Unicure and I just started like prattling all this stuff off because like we were just chatting and stuff. And like I think I kind of like overwhelmed her. And I remember like at the end of the appointment, like she was the loveliest lady. I genuinely she was the loveliest lady. The first time I went through the testing experience, my genetic counselor and I and my neurologist was not a good experience and was not a good mix of people. So it wasn't. Um, it was just not great. And I can remember when the request was made, like I was like I want it noted that like I want a different genetic counselor. Like I don't want the same one. And then there's another lady that works in the genetics here in Northern Ireland. And like I know her through like advocacy and stuff like that there. And I was like, if we could also like, it was after talking to somebody else, they were like, oh, I think we should maybe like ask for somebody other than her as well, because she might have like, you know, an opinion already. Not an opinion, but like she knows you. So I was like, yeah, fair point. Like to keep this like pretty neutral and everything, like let's get a team of people who don't know me. Um, so I didn't really have any like expectations or like I didn't really think about like what to expect or that. I just was like going through the motions. So like the first appointment, I was like, well, that's the first one done. She thinks I'm fit to get tested. Sure, that's great. That's the way I looked at it. And then the second appointment, like I met the professor, my neurologist, and we had a brief talk. He had been involved with my grandmother and a couple of other family members, and he remembered them. And they asked, are you still happy to continue? Have you any questions? I was like, nope. And I went round the corner to another little room and I gave blood. And even giving the blood test, I was just sort of like, okay, we're giving blood. I don't know whether I was just like zoning out or it truly just was like the right time for me. Like everything was just like, this is okay, we can get through this. And like throughout the whole testing process, I think the one thing that stood out to me was living as somebody who was at risk for so long. And I don't know, Claudia, you might relate to this, being like in the HD community. It's you would like talk about like something to do with Huntington's and you'd maybe be like, oh, like I have said like I have a DNR on my file, or I've said I don't want peg fed, or oh, I've got a will made, just in case. Or you'd be talking in ways, kind of like putting like your ducks in a row for like if you ended up having the disease without testing. You were just like getting, you were like, no, I'm thinking ahead about this. So like when James and I moved into our house together, I hadn't tested yet, so we didn't put me on any of the like legal documents of it, because if I tested, then that would be a thing we'd have to deal with if I came back positive. So you were constantly thinking ahead like that. But when you would do things like that or say things like that, people would be like, oh, no, 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 don't talk like that. Don't talk like that. No, no, you be grand. Sure, it's 50%. It's 50% be grand. Or like even when I was going through the testing process, like I would say something and I'd be like, if the results, don't go in our favor, like James and I, we're not going to do this and then we're going to do that. And I'd be talking like that there. And oh no, don't talk like that. Sure, it's 50%. Like, no, you'll be negative. You'll be negative. And I was like, let me flip and talk. Like, if these thoughts are in my head, like, let me express them. And I remember sitting in my first appointment, and the woman was like, what would you do if you tested positive? And I gave her my answer genuinely. I was like, well, I don't know. I don't know how I'll react. I could take to my bed for 2 weeks, or I could just keep going and it could give me the strength to, I could find the strength to keep fighting and keep going. I don't know. But this is what I hope I can do. And I gave her my answer. And then she was like, what would you do if you tested negative? And I gave her my answer, like, oh, sure, the world would be great. Like, sure, that's wonderful. You don't have to put any thought into that. Like, you don't have to put any plans in place. You don't, like, that'd be great. And she didn't take my positive answer. She was like, no. She's like, oh, it was a wee bit just like blasé, like a wee bit, you've skimmed across the top there. And she's like, what would you do if you tested positive? How would you feel? And she made me deep dive into my emotions. And I don't like my emotions. I keep them hidden, so I do. They're between me and myself and I. And she made me deep dive into it. And for the first time, I actually got to say what I was thinking and how I felt. And like, I come out with like stupid stuff as well. I was like, well, same as savings. I'm not doing the work to the house that I have planned. I'm going to go on a cruise, and then I'm going to go on a safari, and then I'm going to do a road trip across America, and then I'm going to, like, I was even talking silly stuff like that there, but I was allowed to. And I can remember driving home from that appointment with James, and I looked at him and I started crying, and he was like, you okay? Is this too much? I was like, see if I want to talk. Like, see if I just come out with something. Like, can you just let me? Can you just let me talk? Like, can you not shoot me down and tell me, oh, don't talk like that. It might not go that way. It might be okay. And he agreed that day. He was like, yeah, no, totally. And there was a couple of times, and we did sit and talk about, what we would do if it was positive and how we would feel and how he would feel and, finances and future planning and stuff like that there. It was all, it was discussed. So it was, and it was really scary. There was nights I lay in bed and I'd just be like, I'm scared. James, I'm just scared. I've no other words. And he'd just put his arm around me and give me a big hug and he'd be like, we'll be okay. We'll be grand. We'll get through this. And it just, I think that was the biggest thing for me. It was like, just let me say what I want to say. Don't sort of shoot me down. I know people didn't mean any harm, but it just didn't help. But I will say I did try through the testing process. I did try to keep myself quite like, I had days where I was like, if I test negative, I'm going to get a new garden put in front of the house and we're going to buy a caravan and we're going to go on this trip and that trip and we're going to, like get the solicitor and get the house all sorted and and then I was like, if I test positive, bugger fixing the house up, I'm going on a holiday or, and I did let myself jump between the two. I didn't like fixate on one, so I didn't. I tried to stay in the middle, so I did, because I was scared in case I went down, like you said, in case I went down that well. I was scared of going down it and somebody putting a lid on and I wouldn't get out again. So I kept myself quite like, well, I think I did. I tried to keep myself quite, in the middle. Did I even answer your question? I think I just went off on one.
Yeah, you did. If you want to like literally go back on the question, what surprised you is that your counselor made counseling. Like actually great counseling.
Yeah, I suppose that's probably it. Like she really did help
Like,
highlight.
how dare you ask me about my feelings, my real feelings deep down.
I think it helped that like I see about 10 minutes into the appointment with her, I was like, you're a bit of me. Me and you's gonna get on real well. And I think that happened. My guard went down because going into that appointment, you want to talk about a brick wall up. Oh, I went in like a face of thunder. I was like, she's gonna be like the last one. I went in with a face of thunder. I went in completely defensive and say within about 10 minutes, I was like, oh no, she's lovely. Like I give her a hug whenever we were all done and I got my results and everything. I give her a hug. I was like, thank you for everything. I was like, you were a delight. I'd come see you again. Thank gosh I don't have to, but she really was made for that job, and I think that was a big thing for me, having that connection. And hindsight's a great thing, but say when I was going through it when I was 18, say whenever the genetic counsellor I had there, we didn't click, we didn't connect at all. I probably just should have like contacted somebody and requested a new one. I don't know if you can do that, but I'm sure you can. I probably should have tried to, change it. But I am sort of glad that I waited until I was 32 to test, because of the knowledge and the power I had behind myself. But there was probably times over the years where I was like, God, I wish I just had that over and done with. And I don't mean that as like blasé and ignorant as it sounds, but I think the fear of going through the testing nearly put me off for so many years because of what I went through in the early and when I was 18. I think it nearly put me off. And that's why I had that thought of, God, just wish I had it over and done with. Because what I went through when I was 18, I couldn't be bothered going through it again. I was like, I don't need that emotion and that heartache and that upset. And,
Yeah, absolutely. And I can totally, since I'm not tested, I'm usually prone to think, okay, I'm positive because you're like, I'm preparing for being positive, and then if not, that's it. It was me up until a couple of years ago, and then I met the community and I realized that's, a whole other word. There are so many different outcomes and ways of coping with it. And then it was like, I think then it was shifted. Before, I was basically at risk by fear, just because when I knew about HD when I was 18 and a half. I cared for my mom my whole life, but I didn't know what was going on. So when they told me, I had that moment where I was like, okay, I'm gonna go now. I need to know. And then my sister, we never talk about this, but she said that one quote. She was like, when I was in your position, I didn't think I was ready for the positive one. And so I thought about my life. I was 18, finishing school, deciding to go to the university, and I was like, okay, am I ready for this? And that was, no, it's too scary. Now it's also, am I ready for this? No. But it's just because it's not my moment. I will test, I know, because I want to have plans for my family, for my future, for my partner, for a lot of things. It's just not now. So I'm loving the fact that maybe it's really going to be like the perfect moment. I will feel it as you did, Ashley. You don't like it?
it is, no, you're right. You are like,
But it's
I hated that whole like, oh, you'll know when the time's right. Oh, bugger off. No, there's no right time. But I'm not saying there was a right time. Like James and I had just moved in together. Like literally, I moved into our home on the 1st of February, and like my referral was made in February. So like we had a lot going on. Like we were still unpacking boxes, and like I went to the HDYO Congress. Like I think my appointment was like a week or two after that. Um, it's not that there was a perfect time. Like I can remember in the May when I done my blood test, I think it was like, was it the next day or something? I had a massive work event and I had to stand on a stage in front of 200 people, and I still had the like band-aid on my arm from the needle. And I'm like standing up there presenting this like big event. And of course, I was stupid and I wore a short sleeve top. And so everybody could see, like, obviously, like I had just given blood, but they obviously didn't know what it was for. And then, like, it was just crazy. It was, and then I think it was like, then, like, say 4 days after my blood result, I was away on like a massive like weekend that was like a complete connection to my father. Like every memory of my daddy was connected to this weekend. And it was like, so in like the 1 week, it was like give blood, stand up in front of like your entire local community hosting an event, and then go to like one of the biggest like daddy reminders that you could. So it was like a lot of feels and a lot of emotions. So it's like it probably wasn't the best time, but in my head, it felt like the right time, if that makes sense. Like I felt good. I don't know how else to describe it other than like I felt quiet.
Yeah, I like that expression, quiet, like in acceptance of whatever it's going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is interesting because I feel like a lot of people share kind of, and at least like for my wife, like she's like, I don't think about it all the time. It's not like a dark cloud that hangs over my head. Like when I wake up and I'm thinking about it every day and it's hanging over me, like that's probably when I would test. So I think there's this like it either becomes a lot like too much noise to handle or like quiet
Yeah.
anyway. And the process is so can be so long that it's like surreal because like you said, you're just doing normal life things. It's like
Yeah.
until that final appointment.
And you do like see the like 6 months of going through this. I never missed a day of work. I continued to go to like social events. I continued with like I still done like the ambassador stuff and that, and like nobody realized like like nobody knew at Congress that like a week later I was going into my first appointment. You still like I still continued through like a normal life. Like we were at events. I remember, was it 2 weeks before my results? We were at like a massive event here, huge. And everybody was like, why are you here? And I was like, well, what am I going to do? Sit at home? Like
Right.
tick off a calendar like X every day until I get to the 22nd. I
That
was
sounds
like,
miserable.
like I'm like, let's go dance, let's go have a drink, let's go have a chat, let's go. Like, I'm like, distract me. Like, give me something fun.
Melissa, if you want to share any more about maybe what was surprising for you or talk about any of that, I know that you had a very unique, fast process, it sounds like. So if there's anything that you wanted to share about maybe like if you had expectations or you were surprised. And if not, like we're welcome to move on to another question. But I just wanted to give you the space to kind of expand on that a little bit because it did seem like someone said, do it. And you said, I guess I can do it. And then they're like, oh, here's a phone call. So I'm not sure if you had any expectations prior to that.
Yeah. I don't know. And it's like looking back, so it was like 15 years ago when I tested. And as far as expectations, like as at my primary care doctor, they're like, we'll refer you. And I was like, okay. And then I met with the psychiatrist and I filled out some kind of bubble sheet test, I guess, to see if I was like not depressed or something. Like I just remember doing this little Scantron bubble sheet and then I immediately like went downstairs to meet with the geneticist who talked about the process. They took my blood. And then I think it was I want to say it was about like a 4 to 6 week turnaround time, I think. So it was about like a month-ish or so of waiting. But much like for Ashley and in a different sense that like life just went on. Like I was just doing the thing and going to get my result was going to be like going to pick up a prescription or like going to get some food or I don't know. It was feeling really just like normal because I was like, they're just going to tell me what I already know. Like I know for a fact that I'm gene positive. I know for a fact that I'm just like my mom. Um, so I thought it was interesting. I think Claudia, you mentioned earlier, like a like loss of identity. And I've been processing that a lot more over the last like 5 to 6 years. So I think even like immediately following testing was like I already talked about kind of like a range of emotions that happen. But then it's like even over the years, even now, like 15 years later, like I'm still like new feelings will come up that I'm like, oh my God, this is how I feel about being gene negative. And so I think it just always kind of ebbs and flows. Um, but yeah, I just expected to be gene positive and I expected life to just keep on going. And that was not what happened. Um, and I'm grateful for like getting involved in the community and um, yeah.
Thank you. And going through testing changed the way you think about HD or your connection to the community? How did it help you, processing this result?
I think for me, it in a way, I guess, regardless of which way I tested, once one of my siblings had mentioned wanting to test after I did, that's what pushed me to go to a support group. So I think either way, I would have then gotten connected with an HD community. Um, and since then, I've spoken on panels a few times about my testing experience. I've spoken about survivor's guilt, and I think all of that has just helped me cope and helped me meet other people. And I love to meet other people who can. For anyone that like is considering testing, I'm like, I just say just listen to people's stories. Like I don't think anyone, any professional could have prepared me for a gene negative result. Absolutely not, because I knew what it was. I still think they switched my test in the lab and I'm actually gene positive, because now I'm like, I'm on depression medication, I'm forgetful, and I'm like, wait, but it's not Huntington's. I'm just like, I don't know. I'm just whatever in your 30s. So like I still like I think about testing again, which sounds absolutely bizarre. But it's just part of like all the feelings. And but I think that had I gotten into the HD community sooner, I think having the opportunity to listen to more people's stories maybe would have put the little thought inside my head of like, huh, this is what people are saying gene negative is like. Like I think I would have had some of that, but I still would have been like, nope, I'm definitely going to be positive. It's definitely going to be positive. But I think that would have given me a little more context into the feelings of that side of the coin. And not that I was like blindsided, like I said, it's just the feelings have ebbed and flowed, like looking back and like processing different feelings. And I'm processing different feelings about it now than I was 10 years ago or 5 years ago. So,
Do you ever think, Melissa, that like you live at risk for so long and then you make the choice to go and get tested and you go through that testing journey, and you find out like, well, I mean, you find out in a real special way. That's quite as funny as like not funny. Oh my gosh, that's really disrespectful. Sorry. It's the reason why I say that's funny because how I found out my dad had Huntington's, like people are always like, "Oh my gosh, that's awful," and I'm like, "Oh, it was hilarious." I'm like, "It's a part of my story. It makes me laugh." It's like I literally found out in a bar off my uncle by accident because he thought I had already been told.
mhm.
And it's like that's how I found out that my dad had tested positive, you know. Um these things kind of just like happen and you just sort of like make it a part of your journey. But it's like, do you ever think like whenever you go through all those stages and you've had all those thoughts and feelings, and then it's like, okay, you're negative, go be happy, go live your life. And you're like, but it's like it's such a like a light, like a flick of a switch. And it's like you're now allowed to have all these thoughts and like, you know, how do you just jump from I'm at risk to I'm gonna be fine? It's just the way you said there, the way you're like, like I'm clumsy, I'm forgetful. I'm right there with you. I'm like, there's stuff I would have been doing and saying and the way I'd have been reacting, and I'd have been like, this is so a symptom. Not that I was symptom searching, but you're like, this could be chalked up to a symptom. And now
Yeah.
I'm like, oh dang, that's just me. That's just me.
Yeah, I was like 34 and I got on an antidepressant for the first time. And I was like, man, if I was gene positive, I would think this is the start. And I'm like, nope, just a crisis in my 30s. Like,
Yeah. James won't mind me saying this, I'm sure, but like he even feels that relief where like he doesn't have to watch me. Like I trip over my own feet every day on a daily basis without fail, but he doesn't have to worry now. Is that a symptom? And it's so funny how quickly that just turns. Like what you just said there, like completely. I was like, it wasn't just me. I thought I genuinely was like, is it just me that finds this really weird? How you're meant to jump from being at risk to, do you want to take a minute?
yeah, no, I'm good. I'm good. You just got me going because like now I'm also in the position of having a partner who will eventually test. So like processing these feelings now and being on like this side of thing and like just thinking of that about like worrying about things. But
I'm so sorry.
no, yeah, I think it's a unique position to be in. And so I can like understand like the partner's perspective, but then I have like a double, I don't even know. It's like Inception. It's like a dream and a dream and a dream, and
Yeah.
I'm like HD and HD and HD. Um, and
You're in a really special place though, Melissa. Like, you've gone through it for your partner, like, so you know just what it's like. And like you have that connection with the community now. Like you are a freaking ray of sunshine, the two of you. Even when your partner's on crutches hobbling around a congress, you are a ray of sunshine, and like you have that connection with the community now, and like hearing your story tonight, like, well, tonight for me, today for you, um I'm like sitting here and I'm like, she's gonna have so many people behind her when you go through this with your partner, and your partner's gonna have so many people, like, and I think you're in a really interesting position because it could be a totally different experience for you. Because I feel what you were saying about like so many years ago, like associations weren't as big as what they were. HDYO didn't exist when Huntington's entered both our lives. Like, I don't know about you, but plugging the internet in and listening to that dial tone was what we went through whenever we were like Googling Huntington's. So I don't know about you, but it's amazing how much the world has changed from like Huntington's. I can say from Huntington's entered my life. Like, I don't know if you would say the same, like over the years, the fact that you referenced when Google was invented.
Yeah.
And I was like, so you're not that old.
I'm curious for both of you, hearing you talk about some of these changes and hearing how much just the HD community space has grown, and organizations like HDYO have continued to grow and invite more people across the globe in. What would you say to yourself if you could talk to yourself before you went through genetic testing?
This kind of ties into, like, I feel like one of my passions and my drives in life has always been, I want to be that person for other people that I always wish I had in my life. And I think that if I could go back, I'd be like, get your ass to a convention, go meet other HD people, like go get connected. And it's not something I would have shied away from. Like I would have done those things. I think it would have been, I don't know how, besides the fact that I think I'd have a little more perspective on like the gene negative standpoint of things, but but yeah, my first convention in the States was the first time I met Maddie, and that's when they were talking about creating HDYO. So I like to be like, I was kind of around for the inception of it. I wasn't in it. I wasn't in the meeting. I wasn't in the room where it happened. I was outside the room where it happened. So I think just these organizations and like how much they've grown to be very like specific youth focused. We'll use youth in quotation marks since we're talking about Google being invented. And
so we're in our 30s, darling. We're about to get kicked out.
So I mean, I'm still a part of the NYA, and I think I was supposed to be kicked out like 8 years ago, but we're not talking about that. But yeah, I think I would have been like, get involved, talk to people, learn from people, and I think it's a double-edged sword, because I feel like when the time comes that my wife does want to go through testing, like you said, like I've never been like more surrounded by support and people and resources, but sometimes in those moments, it's also when I feel like the most alone, where it's like there's like an overwhelming network and realm of people. And I think too, Ashley, touching on like what you had said, how you're so known in the community and only letting certain people know. Like I've been that person for people in the HD community, and it's hard being on that end of it, because the day I know they're getting the results, and if I don't get a text message or a phone call, I'm like, well, I guess I could probably guess what happened, and then a month later they let me know, or things like that. So just while we have the opportunity, I want to put that plug in to be mindful of, some people really do have like a public platform and they want that process to be very public, but which you can still do. And but also you don't have to be specific about it. You can say I'm in my testing journey and not tell anyone the date of testing, and so just being mindful of all those different things.
Absolutely. Ashley, what would you say to yourself before you went through genetic testing?
Yeah,
You
8 months
definitely
ago,
see
Ashley. What?
Yeah, 8 whole months ago. You definitely see my eyes there, because I was like, I forgot the question. I stand by my, and I know this is rich saying this, like I tested negative, like of course I stood by my decision, but I definitely do. I stand by my decision and the strength I had going through it. I agree with what you're saying about like sharing online. I do have to agree with that. And like that's coming from me, who shares everything and have shared, has like I have shared some very personal, in-depth stuff through like caring for dad and what that was like, like peg feeding and DNRs and all that kind of stuff, like my dad's death was published on social media before I announced it, let's say. Um, and I remember thinking back to that, to the point where when we were going through the grieving process of dad having passed away, I actually had to give my phone away because I couldn't cope with the condolence messages, because I lay awake one night and I counted the comments on posts. I stopped counting at 2000 because I couldn't count anymore. I couldn't read them anymore. And I remember thinking to myself, like, if that's what it was like whenever like dad passed away, I was like, what's it going to be like when I'm testing? I've spoke at so many events, and, I've met so many amazing members of the community, and I love them all, and I love everything I do with the community. But I made that decision not to share. And as much as I do stand by it, and I'm glad I done it that way, I do, and I did feel really guilty. So I did, for keeping it to myself, because I always prided myself in that's why I've done what I've done over the years. Like in 2008, I hooked up my dial-up internet in rural Northern Ireland, and I Googled Huntington's disease, and it was awful. HDYO wasn't even invented. Like the Northern Ireland charity was super small, like they had one staff member. You know, it was really scary what I read online. And that's why I started doing what I do, because I was like, no child, no young person will sit and read those horror stories again. They're going to find the ambassadors. They're going to find my story. They're going to find Melissa. They're going to find you guys gaming on TikTok. They're going to find, they're going to see that wee plug I got in for you there. Did you get that?
Hashtag game over HD.
Yeah, there you go. They're going to find that. They're going to find, I don't know if I'm saying this the right way, but they're going to find this like fun, youthful, energetic, empowering. We are the future of HD. We are not going to hide. We are not going to lock ourselves away. We are not going to be afraid to talk about this. They're going to find this really empowered community, and it's going to make them feel seen and safe and heard. And that's why I do what I do. And that's what I want for the future of this community. I want it to keep growing the way it's going. And I feel there is a part of me where I'm like, I let them down, and I should have shared my journey, even if it was vague, even if it was like, this is where I'm going, this is what I'm doing. I didn't have to get bogged down into details or release the test date or anything. Even like close friends who knew I was testing, they didn't know my result date, so they didn't. But it's done now. It is what it is. I tested, I got through it, I had the strength to get through it. A lot of people have reached out to me since to talk to me because they're going through testing, and that's what it's all about. It's about being there for one another. So it is. And that's what this community is, and we're so delighted we have you, Melissa.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for both for highlighting this experience, and how you're allowed to be in control of your process. Ashley, don't ever feel guilty, because if that was what you felt like was the right thing for you, that's it. We love you. And you were the first person. You're my HDVAP, because you were the one that I found on Instagram, and then I was like, oh, hey, there's organizations, hey, there's people in the world. But it's your testing process, it's your life, and so if that's what it was the best for you, you did great to keep on doing that. And finally, because I know it's getting late, and I'm starting with Melissa, is there anything else you'd like to share about your journey, something that stayed that you'd want others to know? Because I'm at risk, and listening to these stories, this is what takes away the fear. For me, it's what makes me realize that it's possible to get tested. It's something that maybe it's going on in my life, because I always say that I'll get tested, but who knows? But listening to these stories, is what makes it feel less scary and much more I don't know, acceptable.
Yeah. Um, I think the most important thing that like I would say to anyone who, whether you have tested yet or not, is that you always belong. You're always family. You're always Ohana. You're always part of this community. Um, I think at times when people go through testing, they can take a step back from the community, which is whether they've tested gene positive or gene negative. I've seen both. And you always need to do what's best for you. And it's okay for that connection to the community to ebb and flow. Sometimes there's just too much HD happening and you need a break from it. And sometimes it's all you need, or it's what you need when you don't know you need it. But regardless, like you always belong, you always have a place in this community. And now specifically for people who test gene negative, sometimes I've heard the feeling that, well, I don't know if there's space for me anymore, because like why should I have to complain about anything? Why do I need support? Why do I need resources? Like these need to go to people who are gene positive. Um, and I've talked a lot about this in different sessions, talking about, survivor's guilt and this big broad term that we talk about. Um, but we still have a place, we still have a voice. Like testing is such a process, and as much as many of us have prepared for the gene positive result and what that means, like brushing gene negative under the rug doesn't mean that it doesn't have all these complicated feelings with it. And your voice just has just as much space as it does for anyone else. And I also look at it as like, this community needs me and needs people who are gene negative. I mean, some of the studies we can be controls if you're looking at how to get involved. Being in these spaces, sometimes we're put in positions where we're going to end up being the caregivers, or maybe we're not, but we still want to do something about HD. We want to fight and give a voice to those who can't anymore. So that's just the one thing that I would really want to emphasize, and that each and every one of you are so loved, regardless of where you're at in your process, where you're at in your journey. If you just found out about HD, if HD's been your family for generations, if in any way, you're so loved, you belong, and that's it.
Ashley, do you have some final thoughts to add on these beautiful things
I
that
mean,
you
where
said?
where are we going after that? Like, just zip, that's it. No, I
Like ditto.
honestly, yeah, honestly, very similar. It's, like I can sit here and say I never missed a day of work. I was still at social events and stuff. That's not to say it wasn't one of the hardest things that I have ever gone through. And it truly was. It's right up there. I ended up going through severe hair loss through the testing process. And, months after that, I'm still dealing with it. I'm still, on special drinks and medication and stuff to try and combat back with that. And it sounds so stupid because it's your hair. What's the big deal? But it's the aftermath of that trauma that I went through and that high stress situation that, I went through, and it doesn't make it go away. So it doesn't. Um, but it doesn't mean you're not strong enough to get through it, and you're not strong enough to go through this process if that's what you want to do. I lived for years at risk, and I had a very happy life. I was more than happy to live at risk. But like I said, I just knew when the time was right, and I went through my testing journey. And everybody is different, and everybody will process different, and everybody will take from it something different. But just do what is right for you. Do what you need to do to stay, present in that moment and get through it. And always remember, there is a huge community out there, whether you want the entire community standing behind you, or you've connected with one awesome person and, they are your link. That's what you can do, but don't ever think that you are alone in this. Don't ever think that you haven't got anybody in your corner, because the Huntington's community is the most amazing people. And even after having tested negative, you know, I'm not going anywhere. They are not getting rid of me. I will continue to fight because even if you test negative, and I've heard people say, like, I'm afraid if I test negative, like I'll lose the community. That's not the case. You were still a caregiver. You still lost a loved one to this disease. You still have a story to tell, and you will always be a part of the community, no matter whether you are negative, positive, at risk, or even a friend of somebody who lives through it. We are fighting for a treatment right now, and it is the best part of HD history to be involved with because there is some big things happening, and the community will always be there for you, no matter what. And testing is very personal. Think it through, talk it out, do what is right for you, and you will get through it. So you will. You 100% will get through it, and there's people there to help you along the way.
Thank you. Thank you really for being here, sharing this. And you're right, the HD community, if you're HD people once, you're always gonna be one of the HD people, We're not gonna anyone is going to be left behind. So really, thank you for being here, sharing your experience. I know this was a long call, but we touched some really, really important topics. So if for anyone who's watching this, thank you for being here, for watching this all. And remember that if you need to talk, to support, to connect with other people, we are here. You can find us at hdyo.org. So please connect with us because the HD community is waiting.